In the 1700s, Philadelphia was the largest city in the American colonies. Its river, the Delaware, was the main point of entry for the majority of the Scots-Irish. In the 1720s, some 50,000 of them came here, bringing their distinctive lowland Scottish speech. They added an important new element to the sound of American English. And as you've heard, there was no mistaking the accents of these pioneers. In 1760, Benjamin Franklin, who was right about most things, estimated that Pennsylvania was 1/3 English, 1/3 German, and 1/3 Scots-Irish. The Scots-Irish went all over the New World, from Montreal to Charleston. They were to play an important part in spreading English throughout America. But it was here in Philadelphia that the subtle pressures of immigration began slowly to transform the Scots-Irish accent. John Fott of the University of Pennsylvania.
When the Scotch-Irish arrived in Philadelphia, they came into a city that was already multilingual. There were English settlers, and there were large numbers of Germans. German was an amazingly important language in the colonial period, and especially in the Pennsylvania colony.
Today, the most visible descendants of those German settlers are the Amish farmers of Pennsylvania.
As the Scotch-Irish settlers came into this situation, their speech would necessarily be affected by contact with these other accents. And this contact must have been very important in the changes that took place in the accent during this period.
The Germans traded customs and language with their Scots-Irish neighbors, giving us words like hex, meaning a spell. But the best land had gone. The Scots-Irish pushed on south towards the Blue Hills. Here they adapted naturally to the pioneering life of the frontier. With their long rifles and coonskin hats, Scots-Irishmen, like the legendary Davy Crockett, acquired a ferocious reputation as Indian fighters. Their speech excited comment, too. Even contemporary Americans called it broad. Good boasters and compulsive storytellers, the Scots-Irish had a keen ear for a striking phrase, and their proverbs and ballads survive to this day. Davy Crockett described himself as half horse, half alligator, a little touched with snapping turtle. The long rifleman gave new life to expressions like hang fire, going off at half cock, keeping your powder dry, and a flash in the pan. The Scots-Irish flavor of their speech survives today in dozens of colorful phrases like mad as a meat axe and dead as a hammer. The frontier scouts and Indian fighters had blazed the trail. The land-hungry Scots-Irish squatters soon followed. Heading southwest, together with English and German settlers, they followed the trails and rivers into the Appalachian Mountains and beyond, funneled westwards through the famous pass known as the Cumberland Gap.
Lay down, boys, take a little nap, 14 miles to the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 14 miles to the Cumberland Gap.
Today, that combination of Scots-Irish and English and German settlers has created the unique way of life of Appalachia.
Cumberland Gap, 14 miles to the Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, Cumberland Gap, 14 miles to the Cumberland Gap.
In Appalachia, they say that where the English built a house and the Germans a barn, the Scots-Irish built a whiskey still. Willard Watson is an old moonshiner, and he calls his brew Mountain Lightning.
A pint is enough, and a pint is just about too much. If you drink a pint of moonshine whiskey and you won't know where the sun went down or where it come up. She'll get you where you couldn't hit the wall with a handful of beans.
Professor Kratos Williams is known as the father of Appalachian studies. He grew up in the mountains here and likes to keep in touch with what he calls his hillbilly roots.
Good morning, Willard.
Yes, sir. Crater, I'm wonderful to see you.
I'm glad to see you.
According to Cratus Williams, although the English and Germans played a part in shaping the talk of the mountains, the dominant influence was Scots-Irish.
What you doing here?
I'm making some moonshine whiskey on Wildcat Road.
About 3 of our 5 to come into the mountains were these Scotch-Irish people. The things that differentiate this noble kind of a dialect in a way, though it's often laughed at, are these characteristics, I think. No one says hair the way we do. We say her. Similarly, we say bar, far, mar, thar. We continue to use the Middle English in front of ing words. So we go a-hunting and a-fishing and so forth. We continue to omit the final G. I suspect, strictly speaking, we don't really omit it. We never did get around to putting it on. We also have our way of saying OU. That differentiates us from other people. For us, that is a triphthong. We say about the house. If there's an R following that, we really have something interesting. We say flare basket. Let's go up on the mountain and gather flares.
Pronunciations like these are found all over the Appalachian Mountains. This traditional style of speech, words and phrases like plumb right and afeard, is sometimes mistakenly thought to be Elizabethan.
If the boiler don't bust because it's eat up with rust.
Two typical mountain people are Ray Hicks and his wife, Rosie.
Well, Ray and I has been growed up in the mountains. Well, Ray was raised right here, and I was raised not too far from over across the hill there.
Outsiders are impressed by hearing us say hit for it. Hit and it can both appear in the same sentence. If the word is stressed, it's hit. If it's not stressed, it's it. For example, one would never say, I've never heard of hit. It's, I've never heard of it. Hit's something new to me.
You can hear Rosie Hicks say hit for it when she describes the best route to their house.
You fly in an airplane as far as you can come. Then you get in a car or truck and ride as far as you can go and hit. Then you get down and run as far as you can. Then you crawl on your hands and knees as far as you can come. Go that way. Then you straighten up, and then you find a house. It's an old-timey one. It looks haunted, but it's really not.
Ray Hicks is famous round here. People come from miles around to hear him tell folk tales in one of the last true surviving Appalachian accents.
Howdy,
Howdy, howdy. Hello. Yeah.
The next generation will probably never forget these outings.
Howdy, Ray. Howdy. How are you today? Just amazing. How are you? Just come on in.
Howdy, Ray.
Just come on in.
Tell us a ghost story, Ray. Yeah, tell us a ghost story. Yeah.
Okay.
Many Appalachian stories have come from Scotland, and Ray Hicks tells Jack tales like Stanley Robertson in Aberdeen. The most famous is Jack and the Beanstalk. But in this one, Jack meets a beggar who gives him a magic sack.
He says, I'm going to give you something. He said, here's a sack.